me, manifest wisely. All I know is that I've been living for the sightseeing. Been around the world for a visit, first fast ticket. Man, I'm in it, man, I'm winning. I don't have no limit. If I want it, then I get it. If you want it, then I get it. I ain't never done finished. I'm a giver. I've been giving first place. I've been winning 6 shots. I've been winning, but I still keep ripping and I still keep hitting. Just wait till I'm spitting all in. I'm risking it all. Yeah, I don't ever fall. Yeah, but if I do, I get back. If I stand tall, yeah, I want it all. Yeah, a good life, never think small. Yeah, I'ma be big one day. Baby, taking off runway. My name up in the someday. Looking at a girl that loves me. Yeah, I came here to play. I came here to play. Shots I was winning, but I still.
This life is one I'm choosing. I don't stop, I keep moving. Just watch as I cruise. I'm telling you I never let go. If I put on a show, I create the life I want now. And no one ever back down.
Let's go, let's go. Time to grind, get inside your mind. Yeah, we working overtime. That's the only way to climb. We gon' make it in our prime. Signing on the dotted line, cashing checks left and right. That's the way I'm living life. I feel alive when I got a goal in sight. Chip away, I gotta fight. Ain't nobody else in sight. Man, I think I see the light. Yeah, that shit is so bright. Follow me, I got the guide. See you on the other side.
Ain't nobody know what I've been through. Ain't nobody know what I can't do. I'm ready to go in the battle. I'll put on a show, I should dazzle. I'm about to take off. Never gonna stop till I'm chipping at your top. No, I'm about to take off. Never gonna stop till I'm chipping at your top.
So get out, right, Tuesday. You can try it, yeah. 'Cause I love the taste of grace,
Gonna start till I'm chipping at your top. Gonna start till I'm chipping at your top. Gonna start till I'm chipping at your top. Gonna start till I'm chipping at your top.
I'm a vet, I work without regrets. Man, I love the taste of sweat. I won't have any regrets. They get upset when they try and take your rest. And I'm still right at my best. Make them all feel so pressed. But that's the test. If you wanna be the best, it ain't easy, it's easy. If you wanna have success, to keep going like business. Drive it deep into your chest. Every failure is a test. Learn the most, leave the rest.
Ain't nobody know what I've been through. Ain't nobody know what I can't do. I'm ready to go in the battle. I'll put on a show, I should dazzle.
All right, welcome. Happy Tuesday night. Welcome to week 2 of the ABL podcast. I am here with my good friend Cal. Cal, how you doing tonight, man?
Not doing too bad. Coming off a pretty decent weekend. It wasn't full of baseball, goodness. But it was mainly just me lounging on the couch watching the Masters, which is my greatest pastime. So yeah, overall, kind of getting ready to get into it. Nice week 2. We got a lot of corrections to get through here in the power rankings and the standings.
Heck yeah, man. There's a lot of stuff that we got going on tonight. Rundown's going to be very similar, as I mentioned, kind of in week 1. We're going to do most of the same stuff that we normally do. We'll kind of go through our power rankings and talk about standings and just kind of our takeaways from it. Look at some transactions and then just kind of preview next week. See what kind of matchups we got. So hopefully it'll be just kind of a nice quick shot for everyone to kind of recap the last week and look ahead. So let's just move into right away our power rankings for week 2. I'll get them pulled up here. So we, not surprisingly, and I know I've said this in the past, and I feel like I should reiterate it again, but these rankings are completely data-based, right? They have nothing to do with my opinion. But along with that, usually early on in the year, we have a ton of movement, especially after a long week 1, moving into a shorter week 2. Usually there is a ton of movement in, the first really kind of set of weeks, kind of the first 5 weeks, I would say there's a ton of movement, and then things kind of settle, right, for the most part. So as I'm sure everyone can pretty much see on this, there was a ton of movement, not surprisingly. A lot of teams moving up, moving down, some craziness. So let's just kind of look at it. The 2 kind of big takeaways that I had from it is the movement piece. As I stated in the title for this podcast as well, movement is sort of the theme of the week. But then the second piece is the top teams are back in the top. Many of the teams that you and I picked to win divisions did not look great in week 1, and now in week 2, they are back sort of where they belong.
Yeah, it makes you feel a little bit better. Like I kind of know some ball. Thankfully,
Yeah.
Was not looking good week 1. But there are some teams in that green category I still like to see in there, like the Astros, Tigers, Rockies. Kind of some like new faces.
Yep.
I'm glad they still like keeping that above water, keeping in the green there. Honestly, all of them had great weeks yet again. So I would hope to see it be sustainable. Be nice to have just like new playoff teams in the mix.
Yeah.
But a lot of familiar faces back in it with like the Athletics with a humongous week, absolutely just dominated me. And then Jeff back there at the 3 spot there with the massive week himself as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was really cool. I agree with you to see some of those teams that we talked about never really being seen even out of the red, more than anything, still in the top. Gave Allen that shout out last week. Give it to him again this week. For him, I think, in terms of a strength of schedule last week, he was pretty middle of the road, it looked like. But he only fell 1 spot, which means, that he was at least keeping up in some capacity on the scoring side of things, as well as the record side of things. So that's a big piece of it as well. Moving on to some more detailed takes, maybe you and I can kind of go back and forth here and talk about a couple of things as we go through this. But for me, my number 1 takeaway was the one thing I said in the beginning, is that the big dogs are back in the top 10, more specifically the Cardinals, the Pirates, and the A's. All 3 of those teams we saw underperform in week 1. I think Jeff, Duke, and David might even say that underperform is maybe not a strong enough word for how some of their teams perform. Now, again, we talked about injuries and all that kind of stuff playing a role. That's obviously this case. But I feel like you look around every roster in our league, everyone's dealing with injuries, right? Some certainly more than others, but I think that definitely played a role. You see them coming in week 2, all of them having very, very strong weeks. You know firsthand what David and his team were capable of doing. But yeah, all 3 of them back in the top 10. David, the top mover, moving up 14 spots. Jeff, the second biggest mover at 13 spots. Again, just some crazy, massive movement. And actually, now that I look at it, I think David was the third highest. Yeah, so all three of them were I'm sorry, not David, Duke with Pittsburgh was the third highest. So not surprising to see those three back in the top 10.
Yeah, and I'd say something I'd probably add in would be kind of like in the divisional mix is that the Giants being ahead of the Dodgers still. Joe still had a pretty strong week, but the Giants seem to be here and are going to stay atop that division. I don't know how much longer they can hold Joe off. I think they're still undefeated as is. I believe that they're 6-0. But the West is not going to be an easy division. I mean, you still have the Rockies, you still have even the Padres. It's going to be a tough one to duke it out. But this Giants team with a new owner has not really missed any steps. So I love to see it.
Yeah, Rourke's been great. And just to highlight a couple of the things, kind of the main reason, there's about a 200-point difference in their power ranking score. Big reason for that. You look at the strength of schedule, Joe has actually had a much tougher strength of schedule. He's played teams on average that have scored almost 90 points more than the teams that Rourke's played. So that obviously plays in Joe's favor in terms of the rankings. But the biggest kind of difference are the roto modifiers and the hot and cold modifiers. So the roto modifier is just in terms of how many points teams are scoring. Rourke is in the top 3, and the Dodgers are just in their the 6 or 7 through 9, somewhere in there. So there's a couple of differences there. And then the hot and cold modifier as well. They're 2 tiers apart. The Giants are first tier and Dodgers are third tier. So that plays a part in it as well. Next for me, I talked about kind of the opposite maybe of what I just mentioned. The teams that had a really hot start in week 1 that we kind of talked about, followed by a pretty big drop this week. So the Padres, the Blue Jays, and then again, my kind of dark horse team this year, the Nats, all kind of had rough weeks and dropped. They were the top 3 teams, I believe. The Blue Jays were down 11, Padres down 8, and the Nats down 10. So lots of movement, which again, to be expected given the number of teams that moved up a bunch. That means there's got to be teams that moved down a bunch. And so I thought seeing them get off to a hot start and then kind of fall, obviously unfortunate, but all 3 teams I still think are strong and certainly will be pushing for a playoff spot come into the season.
Absolutely. Another thing I had pegged here was the Mariners with a very stressful week overall. It ended up with a 3-0 week, which I think anyone would love to have. But it was all very close games. I don't think a single one was above 20-point win margin. So I kind of factored in here on the rankings because he didn't move up that much. He kind of stayed. He even dropped a spot after a 3-0 week, which is it's kind of surprising with how little of data we have with it. But I think that the win margin was a huge factor of why he didn't move up any more than he did. Yeah.
And there's if you look again, just taking a look at the modifiers, strength of schedule, he looks maybe a little bit on the middle to lower side of the league. But his points for, he's decently low or lower in the points for compared to the other teams around him. And hot and cold modifier, he's about the same. So I think that's probably the reason he drops a couple. And again, this right here, the difference in points here, especially early on in the season, not that big of a deal, right? That could easily be wiped out next week, this week, depending on the scores. But yeah, I wanted to, I know you had put your kind of number 3 and number 4 here. 2 teams I've already talked about. Do you want to talk about the A's and the Nats, kind of what you were seeing there with those 2?
Yeah, I mean, David absolutely showed that anyone who may have had doubts or maybe had any hope that the West might change hands, I think that's kind of out of the question. We have a very long season ahead of us, but I think it was nice for him to kind of get that big week right out of the gate, just to pretty much show there's been a change. There's been a huge change of the roster throughout the year, but this team has not changed as far as how dominant it can be at times. So. He's in third place right now in the division. I think he's just tied for second pretty much. But he's not going to be there for long. It's going to be a hard fought battle at the top end there. Evan's holding on to it for dear life, but I don't know how much longer David's going to let that stand.
Yeah, Houston and Seattle are 5-1 right now, and then he's technically in second with
Yeah.
at 3-3, and with your slow start and Sam's slow start, it'll be interesting to see where the ground is made up there.
Yes, and speaking of winless, we still have the Nationals, which was I thought they'd have a better showing. Not a huge scoring week, only 234 points,
Yep.
which was not scaled to what we saw last week with I think their 400 plus points with the long week. But it did not seem to translate. They got swept again. Again, they were facing tough opponents. They had 3 top tens, I believe. It was the Dodgers, Yankees, and Rockies. So it was already looking bad from Jump Street, and it just went pretty poorly. So I imagine they're probably gonna get a win this week. You would think with their matchups they have coming up. But yeah, it's still a rough 0-6 start.
Yeah, a little preview of our next week preview, maybe when we talk about that.
Yeah, we'll roll into that
a little bit later. But and then my last piece here, and I have Fantrax pulled up too, just going through it as you're talking about that. For me, figured I should highlight the AL Central. Luckiest team in the league is still the luckiest team in the league, sitting 5-1 atop of the AL Central. It feels pretty good right now. But honestly, in reality, I do not feel like I am 5-1. I feel like every day I check Fantrax and I am just disappointed in what I'm seeing. I am very excited that I had red dots next to all 5 of my injured players today. I always love to see the updates, and that means hopefully they're moving forward. I should get Verlander back soon. I'm going to get Duran back at the end of the month. Even Michael Massey. I'll actually have a starting second baseman maybe in the next couple of weeks here. So lots of pieces coming back for me, so I feel pretty excited about that. But John had another great week last week. He's been very unfortunate, I think, but another great week last week. Obviously, Brendan still has a pretty strong team there too. So and even Mark picking up a win too. He's still holding steady. So AL Central, loving where I'm at, but certainly not thinking I'm going to hold on to that for too long.
Right. Yeah, and I even have John. Like John's leading the division right now as far as power rankings are concerned, and still kind of middling around at 500 at the moment. So, it's going to be that 3-headed monster in the Central is going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, and he's not even like power rankings wise. Like Brendan and I are not even close to him.
Yeah,
Brendan's over
surprising.
1,000 points below him.
Yeah, and I assume that will change within the coming weeks for both of you guys. But
I would assume so.
It's going to be it's definitely going to be a hard fought.
I mean, he had John's week 1 strength of schedule was the toughest in the league. So that is kind of all you need to say in terms of his points. And then he's a top 6 scoring team, top 6 in terms of hot cold modifier as well. So his team's good. We'll leave it at that for right now. His team's playing well. So. All right, let's move on to some transaction news. We had our first substantial trade, which, I guess it depends on what your definition of substantial is. But Tyler O'Neill, obviously starting hot this year for Boston, injured now too, although I think he got cleared, if I remember today, the no concussion, I think it was. Yeah, he cleared concussion protocol, but he's going to sit the next couple of days. But still a really interesting trade, a bigger name, I guess, in Tyler O'Neill for J.J. Bleday, obviously a one-time, heralded prospect who hasn't necessarily really caught on, hasn't had a great season, or seasons, I should say, in the past. And then Lara as well, decent prospect for Atlanta. So what were your thoughts on that trade?
So the return for O'Neill was kind of surprising. I thought it was low, but I will have a comment about the concussion that he made. He didn't suffer. He cleared.
Yeah.
But it was very much like in a horror movie when the protagonist is walking through the kitchen, like a dish falls, and that was weird. And then something horrible happens. Like this little incident with Devers is like a omen of a horrible thing that's going to befall Tyler O'Neill. Like something horrific injury is going to happen within the next 3 weeks, and he's going to be out for the season because of Tyler O'Neill. It's just what he does. I mean, we can't control it. We can't control how the universe works. So honestly, it's not a bad return. It's not a bad, price to get O'Neill for, but you gotta at least recognize that who knows how long you're going to have him. But if he's not going to sustain what he's doing now, but even if you get, 20 homers out of him, that's a really, really good deal.
Yeah, yeah.
I was kind of a Blade fan coming out of Vandy. Has never once shown any of that that bat to ball skill and power
No,
that he had
never,
there.
really never.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but he still made it to the major leagues. I assume because he's with Oakland, but even when he was with Miami, it just was never clicking. So, I I was surprised that Steven let him up for that price, but I do think he sells an asset that he may not be able to use later on for assets he can use later. So it's maybe not that bad all in all, but overall surprising market for O'Neal.
So I have some interesting maybe insider information about the return. Steven actually had reached out to me post trade after some of our comments last week, just about kind of trading in general and that kind of stuff, and the dump date and everything and its impact. And he actually reached out just with some information about like his negotiations in a sense, just to kind of chat with me about what we had said and how he perceived it, kind of going through it in real time. And he actually said there were only 4 teams. Well, he said there were 5 teams that reached out, really only 4 serious suitors. And this was the best return that he could get for O'Neal.
Sure.
And so to me, that again, I think it speaks to our conversation last week, kind of interestingly enough, where it is how people are viewing the trade market or their ability to trade. Is that hindering even now the deals that are being made? Right? Like are the trades that actually can be made, are the returns just not going to be as good for high level players right now because of the fact that people are scared to make a trade that's going to be viewed as dump, right?
Right,
in some capacity. So I think taken from what he said specifically about his experiences, and then just what we've seen, and I'm sure in conversations we've potentially had, I certainly know I have, about how people just don't want to move their MLB talent right now. People want to be able to acquire MLB talent without giving it up, in a sense. It makes it a very, very interesting landscape, as we've talked about many different times.
Yeah, and it's tough for an O'Neal deal that gets to be viewed as totally dumpy because it's, I don't know, you're selling a really hot bat at maybe one of the highest prices he's had in years.
Yep.
And he's $7 right now until 2026. I mean, that's not even like that's still a future asset that you can have. So it is. I totally get where Steven's kind of in a bad spot, but I'm just surprised by the trade market overall for a guy like that who is red hot right now.
Yeah. It's very. I don't know. I feel like interesting is not the right word. It's not the right descriptor in terms of how the trade market looks. And again, who knows? Maybe it'll ease up a little bit. Maybe it won't. I feel like in my, I don't know if you've had any discussions with other owners, but in my discussions, it feels like people are just, I don't want to say content to wait until June 1st, but they almost feel like they have to wait until June 1st. And then the rules are, go away and then we're good to go. So I think it'll be interesting to see if people can get creative or not. But anyway, that was just an interesting takeaway, again, at least from a transaction standpoint. And then looking at just transactions in general, I know you had, or I guess I think this was my note, actually, now that I think about it, in terms of just like the adds and drops. I had kind of put it's kind of like a slow drip of transactions every day. Not anything necessarily major, which again, to be expected. Not any crazy drops by any means either. I look at this list and I can't really pick anything out to even talk about for the most part. But yeah, just kind of mainly some MLB guys here and there, but most days just kind of normal. People are still spending fab though. Which is
absolutely.
Be
not a lot of it, but
interesting to see come later on in the season with the reduced fab. Is that going to be a hot commodity or what's it going to look like? So,
yeah,
all right.
There's really not much to talk about with this. Unfortunately, there's a couple spot starts, maybe a reliever, a minor league guy. It's overall a pretty boring period.
That is an interesting point. The whole spot start thing. This Jonathan Cannon pickup. Oh, and actually, that's right. Their game got postponed tonight, so we don't even get to see if. He's going to start, but it looks like he's going to start tomorrow still. But that's true. There have been a couple of like really random pickups, I guess, of just like some spot start guys, which Jonathan Cannon. I don't know about you. Had you heard his name prior to me mentioning it 30 seconds ago?
No way.
Like,
No way.
I no clue who this guy is. So it's like,
oh, wait a minute. He's a dog. Yes, I do.
oh,
yes.
Okay. I don't. At least maybe I do, but I'm just not
I
recognizing
was like, that
it,
name rocks, though. And I'm like,
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I absolutely. I don't know why I was just totally blanking out, but I definitely remember this dude from Georgia.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
I would just tune in. I would just tune in every now and again. I'm like, that's a freaking sweet last
like
name.
top. Was it like a top or higher end prospect or
No,
I
not
feel
even
like,
close. I mean,
okay,
I
that's what
want. I don't know how old he is, but I want to say like Emerson Hancock era. That's why I watched the most Bulldogs baseballs when Hancock was pitching.
He's 23.
But
he was drafted in 22 by the White Sox.
Yeah, he could have been in Hancock's class. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I guess that would make sense. I was watching those dogs baseball then, but yeah,
third round's
that
pretty
was
good
totally
too. That's not
drawing a blank here.
That's not bad. He's 6'6", 213.
Yeah,
I mean that's not bad at all. Yeah, from Georgia. Interesting. Okay, well there you go. Learn something new every day.
Yeah, go Dogs.
All right, so that's kind of it for that. Last piece that we have here is just to talk about kind of the head-to-head schedule for next week. I'll pull that up here. So here's scoring period 3. Can't see everything, but I'll just kind of scroll up and down as we need to for specific teams. But the first thing that stood out to me looking through this were these 3 matchups on the bottom. St. Louis gets San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and Las Vegas all in the same week. That, I mean, you're arguably playing against, St. Louis, I still think we consider probably a top 5 team. You're probably playing against 3 other teams that could also be considered top 5 teams. So massive matchups next week. It will be very interesting to see if Jeff can persevere out of this. Again, a lot of it I'm sure will come down to are all these guys going to get 7 starts? What are their injuries, situations look like, etc. So that was kind of the first thing that I saw from next week. How about you?
I mean, if he goes 1-3, does the strength schedule modifier put him like to first place? I mean, what is it? I mean, this is huge. This is a humongous week here.
If he gets scored on like 1,200 points or something like that, he's probably going to go up in the rankings.
Yeah, wild week. I mean, I feel bad for him, but goodness. And then I think next up we have a kind of a meeting of the winless teams as well, which we had discussed earlier. Rangers Nats. That's going to be fireworks going off. I'm pretty fired up for it.
We got to see who wins this week. Someone will no longer, assuming there's no ties, someone will no longer be winless, right? Which is great. But that was kind of something I was looking at too, because so Milwaukee is winless right now. They also play the A's and Giants, but they do get Cleveland. So possibility for a win there if they don't get one this week. Texas, again, if they lose to the Nats, they get the Dodgers. They play next week, not this week. Or do they play this week too? I had them as playing this week too. Yeah, me too. Maybe I missed it. Maybe they play this week and next week. That'd be interesting. Let's see if I just pull them up here. We'll see. Texas, who do they got this week? No, they don't play them this week, so they play them next week. Okay, so if neither of them win this week, which Sam's got the Rockies, Yankees, Tigers, that was last week. Because we're in week 3, right?
Yes. This is week 3.
My goodness, we're talking about week 2. We're playing in week 3. Yeah, so they're playing right now this week. So 2 winless teams are playing. Someone will no longer be winless this week.
Okay, I was tripped up there. Okay.
Yeah, man, gotcha. I was tripping myself up. Jeez. So we'll see there. And then Zach has, who did I say he has this week? He's got Cleveland, San Francisco, and Las Vegas this week. So Giants and A's are going to be tough. But Cleveland definitely could be a winnable game there. And then who else do we have winless here?
I'm going to go off record and say I will get one.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you.
I want this off the record, though. I don't want this being clipped or brought up ever again. I will get a win this week. So I guarantee it, off the record.
Who are you playing this week? You got Miami, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. Okay, I mean, Pittsburgh
feasible.
might be tough, but
Pittsburgh might be my easiest matchup.
Yeah, but Miami, Chicago. It's certainly winnable. Next week too. Mets, Rays, Reds next week. That's possible.
I can stomach it.
Can Chicago get a win this week? They have Cleveland, myself, and the Giants. Maybe a tough part for Chicago is he's got some injuries, but he's got a lot of MLB guys, right? He's got a lot of young stars. Maybe later on in the season he'll be able to pick some up, but wouldn't shock me if he was kind of the last winless team in a sense. But
Sure.
cool. And then I think you had, or I can't remember if you were talking about the Braves.
Yeah,
or I was talking
had
about the Braves.
Braves with a pretty rough go of it. I'm pulling up their head-to-head right now.
Dodgers, Rockies, Yankees.
Yeah, I mean 3 top 10s going at it. That's
Yep.
not going to be easy. And the East is already contentious enough. You don't really need that thrown in the mix of everything too. So if he can even get a win out of this week, that's a win in itself.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So best of luck to him to not go 0-3, but it's a heck of a road ahead for the guy.
Yeah, the just to kind of do a run through the standings too. Kind of talked about the AL Central already, so I'll move on to the AL East. Really kind of a crazy division so far. Yankees, Orioles, Red Sox, Blue Jays, all 500 or better, playing really well. Obviously ranked pretty high too. AL West, you mentioned already the teams being out there, and yourself and Sam hopefully looking to get a win this week. NL Central, looking probably like a 2-team race unless Frank does something to really bolster his team, but probably looking like a 2-team race there. NL East, like you said, crazy division. I think this year, especially if Miami can do something somehow, and the Nats, obviously, we both feel like the Nats have the potential to compete in that division. And then lastly, the NL West, again, a lot of really good teams out there with the Rockies finally being good this year, and Diamondbacks and Padres being competitive, should be a good race out there as well. So, anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, league is.
Oh, hang on one second. Sorry, I lost you for a second there. I had to switch scenes on you. Go for it. You're good.
No, I mean, league is alive and well. I've never felt like there's been a better competitive balance. I mean, it feels so good.
Yeah.
I feel like my team is not that ugly. It's not good. It's definitely not a good team. I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. But the fact that it's the worst team in the league makes me feel good, because it's like, this is how elite this league is. No one's this bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think league is very healthy at the moment.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, I don't disagree in any way, shape, or form. It's been a good start to the year. Seeing a lot of new teams show up and really be around has been awesome. So with that being said, that's all we got for this week, for week 2. And we will see you guys all next week. Same time, same place. Have a good rest of the week.
Let's go. Better hit the gas for a minute, no cap, no limit, no tax. Till I finish that track, till I get it, got my cash out. Liquid never pass my limit, too fast when I'm spinning, read it back, now they get it, flipping that switches, I'm hitting these bars, I can give that space, I can flip it gold bars. These kids no pun, never winning, no thinking at my best, I didn't know when I'm hitting on a mission. Ooh, spicy, I know they like me, but I got a whitey, she be real nice to me, no one works like me, got a different mindset, married is spicy, got a different psyche, ooh, living to icy, living life nicey, living life nicey, living divinely, man, I'm just wisely, all I know is that I've been living for the sightseeing, been around the world for a visit, first class ticket, man, I'm in it, man, I'm winning, I don't have no winning, if I want it, then I get it, if you want it, then I get it, I ain't never done finished, I'm a giver, I've been giving from space, I've been winning 6 shots, I've been winning, but I still keep ripping, and I still keep ripping, to the weights, I'm spitting all in, I'm risking it all, yeah, I don't ever fall, yeah, but if I do, I can't back it up, stand tall, yeah, I want it all, yeah, a good life, I don't think small, yeah, I'ma be big one day, baby, taking off runway, my name up in light someday, looking at a crowd that loves me, yeah, I came here to play,
Just watch us as I prove it. I'm telling you, I never let go. When I'm in the fight, I'm on the show. I create the life I want now, and no one ever back down. There's healing, life's the seasons. Find your reasons, find your reason. Go deep and go see deep. Be life, be one that just be pleasing. No weakness, we have no reason. I'm mind of a time when we come to believe it all. I just wanna be a free man. Need a friend that can teach me how to be man. How to think, what to do, what to be in. Make moves, need to change in my own hands.